In every kind of irreconcilable conflict that is based on identity, there is this fundamental question: which is more important, our interesting differences or our common humanity? And if all that matters to you is our differences, every issue becomes a symbolic death struggle for your way of life. And it polarizes people, makes them hate each other. Too many people believe that civil unrest and political divisions are inevitable. But I'm here to tell you there is a different path. I ask you to look back to Northern Ireland and the power of peace and reconciliation to lead the way. Let me explain. In the early 1990s, peace in Northern Ireland was treated as an unattainable dream. Northern Ireland was ravaged by sectarian conflict throughout the late 1960s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s. It was a period of fear and violence known simply as the Troubles.
3 explosions on the busy main street of a rural town.
Barricades and burnt-out vehicles in West Belfast.
If you're at risk, you may well find that you've got a bomb inside your car.
On the one side were the Unionists, those who wanted Northern Ireland to remain a part of the United Kingdom. On the other side were the Nationalists, who wanted Northern Ireland to leave the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. There was a dimension to this that was religious, because the Unionists were predominantly Protestants and the Republicans were part of the Catholic minority. Armed groups acting on behalf of both sides engaged in bombings, shootings, and assassinations that resulted in thousands of deaths. And many of the victims were everyday citizens. For decades during this whole period, the conventional wisdom was that the United States couldn't play a role in the peace process because of our so-called special relationship with the UK. I did believe we could play a role. I thought we had a responsibility to try to help end the bloodshed. In 1995, I made the first visit by a sitting United States president ever to Northern Ireland.
My friends, everyone in life at some point has to decide what kind of person he or she is going to be. Are you going to be someone who defines yourself in terms of what you are against or what you are for? Will you be someone who defines yourself in terms of who you aren't or who you are? The time has come for the peacemakers to triumph in Northern Ireland, and the United States will support them as they do.
What I was trying to say, and what I believe then and believe now, is that in every kind of irreconcilable conflict, there is this fundamental question: which is more important, our interesting differences or our common humanity? And if all that matters to you is our differences, then every issue becomes a symbolic death struggle for your way of life. People turn each other into two-dimensional cartoons. This is all that matters about you, and it's paralyzing. You cannot keep any society together, and you cannot keep a political democracy alive if that's what your politics is based on. This is an old story that we face over and over and over again.
I grew up in the American South, in one of the states that tried to break from the American Union. I was reading the other day a book about our first governor after the Civil War, who fought for the Union Army and who lost members of his own family. They lived the experience so many of you have lived. When this governor took office and looked out over a sea of his fellow citizens who fought on the other side, he said these words: "We have all done wrong. No one can say his heart is altogether clean and his hands altogether pure."
So those words were from Governor Isaac Murphy, who was the first post-Civil War governor of Arkansas. He was highly sensible of the fact that he had to somehow bring things together.
Thus, as we wish to be forgiven, let us forgive those who have sinned against us and ours. That was the beginning of America's reconciliation, and it must be the beginning of Northern Ireland's reconciliation.
It was clear then that the people were way out ahead of the politicians, and ready for peace. In particular, women and young people had organized. So we worked for 2.5 years on this peace agreement. After intense negotiations led by Special Envoy, former Senator George Mitchell, the parties of Northern Ireland and the governments of both the United Kingdom and Ireland reached the Good Friday Accord. What always happens when you get up to the edge of these peace agreements, people get buyer's remorse. They start getting cold feet. And the last night I was up talking on the phone with them, making the calls that Mitchell or Tony Blair or Bertie Ahern, the Irish Prime Minister, asked me to make. So I did that till 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the morning. And then at 5, the phone rang again. And Mitchell said, you need to make a couple more calls. So I made a couple more calls, and I just kept saying, you gotta jump. You have to take a flying leap of faith. And they signed. Then it was overwhelmingly approved by voters in both the North and the South. The genius of the agreement was that it said, first of all, you must forswear violence. Secondly, we will have majority rule, but minority rights, and we'll have shared political decision-making. For now, you're a part of the United Kingdom, but we will now have special relations with the Republic of Ireland too. So everybody got a truly unique opportunity to broaden their identity without giving up their old identity.
After a generation of bloodshed and decades of division and acrimony, George Mitchell ushers in what the whole island hopes will be a new era of peace.
I do think that really we have things happening that'll never happen again.
Obviously, the specific types of divisions we see in America and elsewhere today are different, but at the root of all the challenges we face, there is the same question that the people of Northern Ireland once faced. All this stuff requires people to trust one another. It requires people to make compromises. It requires people to believe somebody on the other side when they say, I'm not going to stick it to you on this. And it's really important. It's real life. In other words, countries are like people and families and businesses and any other organization. You have things come up. You have personal conflicts. You have institutional barriers. You have all kinds of things you have to negotiate. But it begins with wanting. You have to want it. You have to believe that staying together matters more than splintering apart.